As a wee baby YouTuber over 6 years ago, my second video ever, I sat down at this desk with my tea and talked about, well, really manifested building my natural science illustration and botanical art career. That video has continued to be one of my top performers throughout. It still gets dozens of views every week. That art career, though, that was just beginning to take off, well, it crashed and burned. Now I am rebuilding my illustration and art career, but in a whole new, different environment. One of my big concerns as I rebuild my art career is the role that AI plays in this new landscape. Now, to be clear, what ruined my art career was not AI. It was some serious chronic health issues. I think this is something that really needs to be talked about in terms of job security for artists and illustrators. I have a whole playlist, which I'll link up above. But now that I am recovering and getting back in and rebuilding my art and illustration career, I do have to consider AI in my planning. So over the last few months, I've put a lot of thought into how to AI-proof my newly developing art career. There are artists and illustrators who I really admire and whose careers I had seen as a sort of model, as guidance, who have really struggled with maintaining their commercial illustration careers in the face of AI development. One artist who springs to mind is Holly Exley. I will link to some of her videos on the subject. So obviously, as I'm rebuilding my career, I don't want to put myself into that situation. In this video, I am going to discuss 3 things that I believe AI can't do and will never be able to do, and how I am pivoting my art career to focus on that and really focus in a way that AI-proofs my career. In this video, I am talking specifically about income streams, specifically relating to art and illustration. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to get into other creative income streams that are tangentially related, like ad revenue or sponsorships on YouTube or teaching workshops. Those are all interesting options, but I don't consider that making a living as an illustrator necessarily, or making a living as an artist. So in this case, in this video, I will be specifically talking about how I am AI-proofing my art and illustration career, and by that I mean making money off of creating artwork directly, whether that is creating artwork and selling the original piece, creating artwork and selling reproduction rights, or creating artwork and selling prints and products with that artwork printed on them, but in any case directly derived from the art piece itself. Hope that's clear. Now, before I dive into that, I do want to give another disclaimer, which is while I'm not concerned about AI stealing my art and illustration jobs, given these changes that I'm making, I am still very concerned about other aspects of AI. Up above and down in the description below, I have links to a channel that discusses AI safety. I think that there's some real broader safety concerns about AI and how it works and what the risks are more broadly to us as a society, not just to my illustration career. I also have some concerns about the ethics of AI, and I will leave some links to that as well. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Lee Angold. I'm a botanical artist and natural science communicator based in Canada. On this channel, I share watercolor techniques and tips as I explore the natural world and bring you along on my adventures. If this is content that you're interested in, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. So without further ado, These are 3 things that AI can't do and how I'm pivoting my art and illustration career to focus on them. So the first thing that AI can't do is create a human-to-human connection. I'd like you to think about the times that you have purchased artwork. Whether that's an original painting or a print or even a sticker from a local artist, whether that's an object like this handmade mug that I got from a local potter friend. Most of us, when we're purchasing art, we are purchasing because of the human connection. I could get a perfectly functional mug from any chain store, but I chose to spend more to get a mug that's made by a local potter because of that human connection. AI is never going to create a human connection because AI isn't human. I am prioritizing the human connection in my art career a few different ways. The first way I'm prioritizing a human connection is by pivoting away from commercial illustration, packaging, editorial illustration, where I'm interacting with a company that doesn't necessarily care about the artist, but rather a finished product. And I'm pivoting towards fine art and selling products directly to customers. I will note that in natural science and botanical art, there is a third option, which is scientific natural science illustration. That's a thing that I think has a little bit more resilience towards AI in particular. However, that field is getting squeezed in other ways, and I have never been able to fully break into that field. I do think that it's relatively AI-proof. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Another way that I am prioritizing the human connection is by doing more gallery shows, exhibitions. In particular, I'm focusing on applying for grants and public exhibitions. I'm fortunate to live in Canada, where we have a relatively robust government grant program for the arts. We'll see how long that lasts with other changes, but for now, that it has been a huge part of my income over the last few months. Finally, even within the realm of selling directly to customers, I want to prioritize a human handmade connection with my buyers. Now, I realize that not every person who wants to appreciate my art is going to buy an original painting. That's totally understandable. They take a lot of time for me to make, and so therefore they're very expensive. However, rather than producing a zillion products through print on demand, which is a model that I briefly experimented with, I am narrowing my line to include, in addition to original artwork, limited edition prints printed by a local printer. I will also be printing some cards and other merch, but again, working with local printers, sustainable materials, and really focusing on connecting to my buyers and helping them feel like they are included in my story rather than just buying some merch that is mass-produced. I've been really gutted over the last few years that I've not been interacting with my audience, with my viewers, with my buyers one-to-one as much as I used to and as much as I want to. I really want to fix that. In order to pursue that personal connection, I am focusing on creating art with a story, sharing my experiences, and interacting directly with the people who consume my content, whether that's buying artwork, watching me here on YouTube, or following me on other social media or on my blog. I really do want to interact with people. I have a link to my free Discord down in the video description below, as well as my Patreon, where I am just starting once again to post some regular updates. I look forward to connecting with you and finding out about your experiences in the natural world, your art journey. Come and join me. The second thing that AI cannot do, will never be able to do, is experience the real world. The way an AI experiences the world, if we want to call it that, if we want to personify the AI, is through a data set, through a library of human creations. So for example, an AI trained to create images that look like photographs or paintings would be trained on a visual library of photographs and paintings created by humans. Those libraries can be very large. Modern AIs can have hundreds of thousands, millions of entries in their training sets. However, even if an AI developer collected every single image ever created by humans, annotated it, and fed it to an AI, every single image ever created by humans would still not even scratch the surface of the diversity of life, of the ecosystems, of the experience of being on Earth. And so there is a connection to the natural world that an AI, no matter how well trained, no matter how advanced, will never be able to provide. From the point of view of my career and my experience, in speaking to my community, in creating those human-to-human connections I discussed in the last point, there is a lot of desire in our society. There's a lot of people who want to better understand their environment, who are curious about their surrounding environment, who feel disconnected from the ecosystem surrounding and supporting us. I know that this is something that I feel as well, and it really drives my interest and my artistic process. I love going out into the world and expressing my curiosity and finding out more about the ecosystems around me, researching as best I can, painting the things that I see in ways that I've not seen them represented elsewhere. And how that can help me learn and how that can help me communicate that new knowledge to people. This is even more significant in the case of scientific illustration. So in that sense, I'm meaning illustration for a scientific audience, whether that's scientific botanical illustration for botanists or medical illustration for doctors. There are fields of illustration that help these specialized academics understand and communicate new discoveries, whether that's a new species that's been found or a new process. And that's something that AI cannot do. It certainly cannot do well. Now, this feeds into a little bit of an AI safety concern. I'll leave a really in-depth video up above that explains this way better. But basically, when AIs are faced with a task that they are not trained properly for, and that is definitely the case in scientific illustration, then AIs will lie. They will present something as truth that is not true. So if you ask an AI to paint a new species, they will paint something, but it may well not be an accurate representation of that new species. That's a broader concern with AI safety. But for me, I think that really leaning in to painting from life, trying to learn from those experiences, and again, use that experience, use those stories to connect with people and to share what I've learned by going out and experiencing the world, which is something that AI cannot do. By leaning in on that human experience of the world, I can create art that does not compete in any way with AI, because it's just something that's something that AI cannot do. It fills a need that humans want that AI cannot fulfill. The third thing that AI cannot do and will never be able to do is innovate. And for this, I am gonna do a little bit of a nerdy explainer. So some context here, I now work as a botanical artist, as a natural science communicator, but that's not my academic background. I actually went to university. I studied civil engineering, and after university, while I was pivoting into my art career initially, I actually worked at a company that did some deep learning and computer vision applications, which is a different kind of AI. So I wasn't working with generative AI. Nonetheless, the training for that application works fairly similar to the training for an AI, so I can give a somewhat detailed description here and tell you with absolute confidence that AI in its current implementation cannot, will not ever innovate. So the way an AI works is an AI starts with a library of inputs. If you have an AI that's tasked with creating images, with creating things that look like photographs or paintings, then that AI is going to be fed with a library of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of photos and paintings. And each of those photos and paintings is going to be annotated, is going to be marked with words, with language that describes what exactly is that image. So for example, if I take one of my paintings here, we'll choose a fairly simple example here. This is an oil painting of a human brain. It is painted in a fairly blocky, realistic style. Annotations for this piece might include a trace out of where the brain is on this image. I could say this has a smooth, abstract, bright orange and pink mottled background. I could describe the colors that are used. And this would be only one example in hundreds of thousands or even millions of different images in this library that's training this AI. So in this library would be, unless it was a paintings of brain specialized AI, it would probably have a bunch of different examples in different media, in different styles. It would have different subjects where there's paintings of brains and there's paintings of dogs and there's paintings of tree bark. And each of those is annotated with what is the painting, how is it created, other attributes, colors, etc. Then the AI is given a prompt. The prompt could be something like, well, I would like a detailed watercolor painting of a brain floating on a blue sky with a cloudy background. The AI would go and search its library for all of the different images that are annotated with those words. So it would search for images that are annotated with, this is a detailed watercolor painting. It would search for, this is a painting of a brain. This is a blue cloudy background. And it would combine all of those images, 2% of this one and 5% of this one. It's a little bit more complicated because it breaks it down by area and connected graphs and stuff, but it would break that down and it would create an image that is an average pulling from various different amounts of different images in its library. And then it would present an image. And it would say, okay, here's my painting of a brain on a blue cloudy background in a detailed watercolor style. And then there's a next step. There's usually a training step before it's released to the public, and then ongoing feedback from the public where the human using the tool who has given this prompt then reports back on this image that's been fed back. and they can say, no, that is not what a brain looks. -1. Or, yes, that's what a brain looks like. +1. And along different combinations, different sliders. Did it achieve its goal? And depending on the feedback from the humans, that adjusts the next time that this AI is given the same prompt. So again, if I say, I would like a detailed watercolor illustration of a brain on a blue cloudy background, the first time it gives me this. And the second time it tries to recombine and it adjusts it gives more weight to some of the inputs, less weight to others. And it presents it again. And it will get better and better at recombining all of the different things in its library, but it's never going to be able to create something that's not in its library, right? Like it can combine elements from different paintings, but it's not going to come up with anything truly innovative. And I know we say about humans, there's nothing new under the sun. You're not going to reinvent the wheel. Every cool invention idea that you can think of, somebody else has already thought of. And that's true, sort of, except that humans do innovate. And sometimes we innovate in really big and noticeable ways. My husband's not an artist, but he came up with a really good example. Up until the Middle Ages, there was a dominant style of artwork that represented the size of humans based on their status. So from prehistory to the Iron Age, right into the Middle Ages, when we painted a group of people, the king or the clan leader would be presented way taller than the people around them. You can see this in Egyptian art. And then something happened. In the Renaissance, artists figured out a different way of viewing perspective and started painting people larger based on being closer to the foreground. That was an innovation. That was a change in how we represented the world, not a change in how the world actually was, right? Like kings were not, in fact, significantly taller than other people, but they were represented in art. They were seen as larger than life. And then at some point, we innovated and we started changing how we represented things on paper. And there have been a number of these changes throughout history. If you created an AI and gave it a library that was all of the training data was all pre-Renaissance art, Egyptian art, Iron Age art, medieval art, if you fed an AI with those inputs and you asked it to create paintings, it would never invent a different way of representing perspective. Innovation is a human trait. Other animals, maybe. Definitely not AI. And so in my art career, I am pushing myself to explore, to challenge myself, to try things that I have not seen before. Whether that's using new materials, combining materials in different ways, trying different lighting, different perspective, exploring all the different ways that I can imagine of changing my artwork, not based on what somebody else has done, not based on something I saw someone else do, but what I haven't seen someone else do. Will I completely reinvent the wheel? Will I make the next big breakthrough from current contemporary art into whatever the next step is? Probably not. But I surely will innovate in some ways. And that makes my art human. It makes my art create a human connection because there's nothing more human than that innovation. And it makes it completely different from AI. AI is a narcissist mirror. AI gives us the average, the platonic average, the platonic ideal even, of what already exists in the world. It can give us the average of all of the favorite paintings that we have all mixed together, but it can't make something that has not been created before because of how it's written. So in conclusion, those are the 3 things that I'm going to focus on that AI cannot do, will never be able to do. AI cannot and will never be able to make a human connection. AI cannot and will never be able to experience the real world. And AI cannot, and will never be able to innovate, truly make up something new. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Did I miss something? Did I get something wrong? Let me know down in the comments below, or join me over on Discord to chat some more. I'm really curious to hear from you. And also, I'd love to hear how you are adapting, whatever your career is, to this new world, to AI. Thanks again. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.